Hey, this is Jay from A Stitch in Time in Bemidji, Minnesota. Good afternoon, or if it's afternoon where you're watching. I am about to do probably the most controversial broadcast that I have ever done. And the question is, what brand is the best sewing machine out there? And in the sewing world, that's tantamount to asking, a car buff, is Ford or Chevy better? There's different views, different opinions, different experiences all around. And so what I'd like to do is, as I've been traveling around, had a lot of people ask this question, and I've learned to kind of adapt what I have to say to them. I don't say the same thing to everybody. I share with them the same thing I'm going to share with you now. And so I hope this is helpful for you. If you're looking for buying a new sewing machine, there's a lot of kind of trepidation. What should I get? What's the best one out there? Which one's going to fit my needs best? What's going to be most enjoyable for me to use over the long term? And am I going to be able to understand it and use it? And so I hope that this can be helpful for you. I do want you to know that at the end of this live stream here on YouTube, if you have a question or something that you're facing where you say, Jay, what do you think about this? Or have you thought about that? Please feel free to jot those questions down. Maybe there's a specific machine that you've struggled with and wondered if it was just your machine or all of those machines. You're welcome to do that. I'm not guaranteeing I'll have the answer for you, but we'll try and help you and figure out what is going to be best for you. Well, as some of you, my customers, know, I am also a Mennonite minister and I travel around quite a bit. And this is a question that comes across many, many times from my customers. Let's see here, I got a little warning here. Something's happening here. So we're gonna, okay. I'm not sure. It's working right now, so we're going to try and just see if we can keep moving here right now. So one of the questions I always get asked is, what's the best brand of sewing machines? And because I'm usually in the Mennonite circles of Shipshewana, Indiana, Holmes County, Ohio, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I usually end up saying, well, I don't sell Bernina, and they go, oh, well, how are you able to stay in business? Because in that world, that is a big part of what they have to sell. And years ago, when I was a Bernina dealer, there's a certain feeling that if you were sewing on a Bernina, you were just a little bit above all the rest. It was like you're driving a Lexus and everyone else is driving Chevys. And so I've been on that side of the boat. I understand that, but I don't say the same thing to them anymore. I have a different answer to them, and the answer is going to come a little bit later in the end. One of the things that people think is that if I buy a machine that has all these great reviews and everyone's just loving it, then I may want to, then I won't have any problems. It'll do everything I want it to do and everything's going to be, sunshine and roses. Well, the reality is that every brand out there has laid an egg at some time or another. I've been doing this now for 27 years, and I've seen a few of those personally. I remember when the Alna Exquisite came out in the year 2001. It was right over the time of 9/11. No one wanted to fly and travel, and this was going to be a big improvement for us. And we were trying to figure out what were we going to do to get these machines in stock and stuff. And this was going to be one that had an automatic bobbin winder. So when your bobbin got close to running out, it would stop, pull the last little bit out, a little mechanism would come and it would come in and wind off of the spool that was down on the bottom. Genius, huh? It was a nightmare from a mechanic standpoint. We had so many problems with them. It was actually made by Juki for the Alna, since they didn't have a contract for anyone to make their machines at that time, and it was not a good fit. We had struggles with it. They had a really good line and the rest of it, but that machine was an egg. Bernina. When I was a Bernina dealer, we were selling the top of the line was their Bernina Artista 200. And that machine had its own eggs as well. You know, if you were doing embroidery and all of a sudden your thread broke, which can happen, I mean, you hope it doesn't, but it can, all of a sudden you have to stop the machine and then you can try and back up. And they had a little knob that you could turn to back it up, but it had a problem. The software in there wasn't powerful enough to run the Windows program that they thought it did, and it would hang up and it would freeze. And the only way to get it out of it was to shut the machine off and turn it back on. And from that point on, there was no recovery. You couldn't load the same design and scroll forward because it would lock up again. It took them 14 months to come out with an update and a fix for that. That was frustrating as a Bernina dealer because these were supposed to be top of the line. Brother Duetto came out. It had this fancy little automatic threader that would go down, and you could just lay the thread across one little slot at the top. It would thread the rest of the machine for you. And it did it beautifully about 60% of the time. And 40%, you had no way of threading it manually by hand. It was a pain if the automatic threader didn't work. It was an egg. It only lasted one machine, and they went back to the old style of threading. Baby Lock, well, Baby Lock doesn't make any of their own machines except their Sashiko and their Sergers, which are good quality machines, but the rest of them are made for them by someone else. So I don't really have a good example with them. I remember when Pfaff was selling a model and I had someone call me up and they wanted to trade 2 of them in on one of my top-of-the-line Janomis. And I said, well, how old are these machines? And they said, 4 months old. And I said, well, how much did you pay for them? And they said, we paid about $12,000 for them. And I went to look at it. I said, we don't have a Pfaff dealer here in the area. What can I sell these for? I have no idea. And so I went and looked online. People were selling almost brand new machines online, and they couldn't even get $4,000 for them. Why? It was not user-friendly. It was not stable. So what I'm getting at is that I'm not dissing any of these brands. You know, Janome had one too. What I'm trying to say is, don't expect that just because you love this brand, there's never going to be any hiccups, or they're never going to, as I like to say, lay an egg. You know, there are some times that they make mistakes. Every brand will have trouble at some point or other. So don't think that I have to find the perfect one. But there are three questions that I ask when we are doing a machine. The questions are this: what are the needs or the wants that I have in a machine? You know, there's what's going to best fit your desires and the reason you're shopping for a machine. And the reason I ask that is this. There's a lot of machines out there. I think we have almost 60 different models just in the Janome line that you could buy it from. Which one fits you? I mean, when I go online and start looking at competing brands that I don't sell, and you try and read all the features of the machine, I do this for a living, and my brain goes, what do all these things mean? How does this work? The second question I ask is, will you need help figuring this out? You know, some machines are way more intuitive than others. By that I mean you can figure them out somewhat on your own. You can figure out what buttons do it, especially if you've been using that brand of machines for a while. So some of them are fairly intuitive, but some of them are not. Again, back when I was a Bernina dealer, they made the Virtuoso machines were wonderful machines. They were mechanically sound, their electronics were pretty stable, and they were just workhorses. But their little icons were not easy to understand. And I remember numerous of my customers coming back and saying, can we have some guide glasses because we can't figure these out on our own. It wasn't intuitive. Are you going to need some help figuring these things out? The third question is your machine going to need some professional service and support as time goes on? Because that is something that you can buy the most whiz-bang machine that's out there, but if you don't have a good quality, a dealer who's going to be able to fix it afterwards, well, what happens if something goes wrong? Where are you going to be if the closest dealer is 8 hours away? You know, that gets to be a problem, so you got to consider that. You know, I want you to note each of these three questions. You know, what are the features you really need? What machines have those features? Are you going to need help learning the machine? And are you going to need some professional service somewhere down the line? All of those tie back to a good dealer. And this is the key I want to say. There are a lot of people that they're so sold on buying a certain machine that they overlook the dealer that sells them. And I know that sounds a little bit like I'm tooting my own horn. Please hear me out, because I have some stories to illustrate this. If you don't have a dealer that stands behind you when you buy a new machine, you really are only getting half your machine. Oh, you'll have all the accessories, you'll have all the same screens and stitches that everyone else has, but if you don't have a dealer that's able to explain to you how to use them and how to maximize them, you're going to be only able to utilize a small portion of them. So my advice to people when they say, what's the best machine out there? I say, well, here's 3 things I would suggest you do. Number 1, look around at all the dealers in your area. You know, a lot of us, there's numerous brands or models we can buy, and especially in today's day and age when we travel, some people are willing to go a little farther. Some dealers also do a lot of training over Zoom and virtually because their customers are a long ways away. In Bemidji here where we live, people routinely drive 2 to 3 hours sometimes to buy a machine. That's a long way to drive when it's 20 below zero in the wintertime and to get some questions answered. So does your dealer have a way of providing some of that training after the sale? What is their reputation with other sewers? Go to the local quilt guilds and ask, you know, I'm looking at maybe getting a machine from such and such a dealer. What has been your experience with them? Every dealer has their gold star customers. And they're the ones that they know they spend a lot of money here, and so they're willing to make sure they go the extra mile to keep those customers happy. But unfortunately, there are some dealers out there that they only are willing to invest their time and energy in those who are going to bring them big money. And if you don't, then they won't. And that's kind of sad. So check around, talk to other people. Ask about how the dealer will help you figure things out after the sale. You know, not just a good reputation in the sale for honesty and integrity. What about after the sale? What about when you have questions and comments? Are they going to sit down with you and take a half hour or an hour to figure out where to go with this? That's huge because you're usually in the middle of a project. And are you going to be able to say, I know my machine should be able to do this, but I can't figure out how? That is where your dealer is going to be able to help you with that. And the third question is, are they known for good quality work in a timely manner? You know, one of my customers came to me and they had their machine sitting for 8 months in another dealer's shop, and their words were they were told that all the parts just don't come in, the parts just won't come in, and yet when they brought it to us, we said these parts are in stock, and we had them 3 days later, and her machine was done. So what is that? What's the diff? Why are they doing that? I don't know. Maybe they don't have a good help right now. Maybe they're struggling with some of those things. I don't know. But I just say, do they have a reputation for good quality service after the sale? Every dealer can have a bad day, okay? I have had to go drive 2 hours away to fix a machine that I didn't fix right the first time. We all are human. We can make that mistake. But when you start hearing from 10 or 20 different people that have had similar experiences of having to take the machine back 2, 3, or 4 times, then it makes you kind of wonder, what is their quality in their service department? So then once you find the dealer that fits these things, you know, he's got a good reputation for good support after the sale, they're willing to help you figure out how to use this machine afterwards and give you the training you need on that, and they have a good service department that are going to be able to support you professionally after the sale, then go to that dealer and buy one of the machines they sell. And you say, well, what if they don't sell the brand I want? Wait a minute. Remember, if you don't have a dealer that's supporting you, you'd only have half your machine. And there's a reason why those quality dealers are carrying the brands they do. Like, I'll just be right up front with you. I sell Brother and Baby Lock. excuse me, I used to sell Baby Lock. I dropped them. I sell Brother and Janome and Handy Quilter. But I used to sell Elna. I guess I'm still kind of an Elna dealer. I used to sell Baby Lock. I sold Bernina. I sold Grace long arm quilting machines. I sold Necky. I've sold a lot of the different machines out there, and I've serviced tons of different brands. So why have I settled on these ones, on these certain three? Well, that's not the point of this talk here today, because every dealer that has invested their time knows their stuff well. I talked to another dealer this summer who was a Pfaff and a Viking dealer, and he has a reason why he likes those machines. I have a little different viewpoint, but he's able to demonstrate them well. He does good support after the sale, and I hear good things about his business. You know what? If I was buying a new machine and I lived in his territory, and the other dealers that were around me were selling the brands that I kind of liked, but they were jerks to deal with, I would seriously consider his brand, because I know that I would get better service and be happier in the long run with it. You know, if a dealer believes in the product they sell, they're a way better dealer than someone who sees money. One of the things that I found is with my fellow competitors and stuff out there in the market is that there are dealers out there that are looking for what machine gives them the highest margin of profit. And right now, Brother is coming out with a new Avenir, and the MSRP on it is $25,000. And I'm just going to tell you right now that if I sold an Avenir for $25,000, I would feel guilty for the amount of profit I took home from that sale. But there's dealers that are looking at that and say, hey, this is our chance to make hay. That was a dad pun if there ever was one. So that's what I'm just saying. There's some dealers out there that are selling a quality line, but they don't want to invest into it because they don't want to do any of the hard work. They just want the money. I would really rather have a dealer who's invested in their product, supports their product, and is going to help me with their product than one who isn't. Give you two examples. I used to sell Grace long arm quilting machines. Actually, it was back before they started manufacturing their own machines, but it continued into that. And I was selling these machines because they were affordable. They were easy to set up fairly, and it fit a price point that people seemed like they were willing to spend. And I remember in about a year and a half time, I sold 8 of those units, and 7 of those units had major problems. One of them, I was back there 7 times to try and fix it. One of the machines was 2.5 hours away, and it was replaced twice. The second time, the machine right out of the box wasn't working right. And they kept sending me parts very quickly. It was 2.5 hours away to put them in, and it doesn't do any good to replace junk parts with junk parts. And so I struggled with it, and finally I said, you know what, maybe it's time for us to part ways. And we did. We parted that ways because I couldn't in good faith recommend that brand to my customers anymore. They came to me trusting me to recommend something that I could stand behind, and I couldn't stand behind them anymore, even though I could make a profit. I know there's a lot of customers in my area right now that are going to the website and buying those machines instead of buying them from me. And that's okay. That's their choice if they want to make. I don't want my name tied to them because of the experiences I've had. The other issue was that I had a customer that brought a Janome M7, Continental M7 when they first came out. Actually, it was back during, just before COVID. And she was so excited. She wanted to start finishing her own quilts, and that's got 14 inches of space to the right of the needle. It was a fabulous machine. And the dealer promised her that she would have a free class, that she could come in and they would have an introductory class to learn the machine. And she goes there and she sets up her machine, and then she looks around the room, and everyone is pulling out these old Singer touch and swear. They're pulling out old machines, things that smelled of mold and mildew, you know, that are pulled out of a barn somewhere. And the teacher came up to her and says, "Oh, you got a nice machine." She says, I hate to tell you, I don't know anything about your machine. I can help you turn it on, but I don't know how to tell you to use it. And the customer was very disappointed because this was her one class. This was her one class for free that she was going to be able to get some instructions on how to use that machine. The machine was expensive. It was $5,500. It was not a cheap machine. And for the next 3.5 years, all she could do was straight stitch sew with it and a few basic stitches because she didn't know how to utilize the features, and there wasn't a lot of videos put out on them on YouTube. And she struggled with that because she loves to learn in person. Well, she came to one of our Handi Quilter classes and wondered if could she have some training because she saw we sold the same machine. And I said, well, we actually have a Continental Day coming up. And she was able to come here with, I think it was 7 other ladies, and they spent an entire day learning their machine. And she said, this is what I wanted. This is what I bought a machine for. But she had to drive 3 hours to get it now, or 2.5 hours. It was about 3 hours to get it. And so my point to you is this: each dealer has a reason why they sell their product. Just because they're selling a quality product doesn't mean that they are a quality dealer. So in a nutshell, what's the best brand of sewing machine is out there? That's going to be determined by the service you get from your dealer. So here's my advice. In a nutshell, buy your dealer first and choose the brand second. That will get you on the road to a quality experience, an enjoyable experience, and you'll probably build some friends through the whole thing too, not just find a dealer. I hope that's helpful for you, and I hope that can help you as you go through your sewing experience, that you would do that as well. I'm going to see if there's any questions, and I don't see any questions. So I'm going to say, have a blessed day, and we'll see you again later.